From hiding in the wheels and withstanding freezing temperatures to sneaking into cargo containers to escape persecution, here are 8 stowaways who beat the odds and actually survived. Number 8. The South African Stowaway. In June of 2015, a 24-year-old man barely survived the hypothermia and frostbite-inducing conditions of riding in a plane's wheel well. How the man was able to survive the plane's 8,000-mile journey from Johannesburg to London defies the odds. According to experts, if a stowaway doesn't get crushed by the plane's wheel, they'll almost definitely succumb to the harsh conditions of the high-altitude flight. Most flights from Johannesburg to London are 11 hours long and cruise at an average altitude between 30,000 and 40,000 feet, putting a human's chances of survival essentially at zero. At that height, it's likely that the man suffered temperatures as low as -54 degrees Celsius, and his oxygen levels dropped to 26% below those at sea level. Some experts believe that in order to survive, he must have brought a canister of oxygen onto the plane with him. While the mystery man remained in critical condition at a London hospital, a body was discovered on the rooftop of a building near Heathrow. Investigators believe that the remains belonged to another individual who had also snuck onto the plane but had fallen out near the end of the flight. The man who survived made a remarkable recovery and was discharged from the hospital in August, less than 2 months after his near-death experience as a stowaway. Number 7. Clarence Terhune. Known as the world's first aerial stowaway, 19-year-old golf caddy Clarence Terhune snuck on board a Germany-bound LZ-127 Graf Zeppelin airship in October 1928. After making a bet with his brother-in-law that he could sneak onto the craft for the return leg of its voyage, the St. Louis, Missouri native boarded the airship through its mail hatch prior to its takeoff from Lakehurst, New Jersey, as it sat in its hangar. That's a long flight from Missouri to Germany. Once the craft was over the Atlantic Ocean, Terhune's presence was revealed to the crew, who discovered him sitting on top of a bag of mail. They decided that the young man would have to pay for his passage one way or another. Terhune was made to work in the kitchen for the remainder of the flight and was arrested upon landing. While the crew on board the airship was less than amused with Terhune's antics, the people of Germany hailed him as a hero. While still flying over the Atlantic, Terhune was offered a job at a department store in Germany. He was also offered a position for a German circus as a trainer of wild animals. All kinds of opportunities. Upon his arrival to the country, Terhune was flocked by girls and journalists, receiving telegrams, and was invited to all kinds of dinners. It's obvious, based on a photo of him getting arrested, with a triumphant grin on his face, that the young troublemaker was pretty proud of his airborne shenanigans. No trouble at all. Number 6. Billy Gawronski. Not all stowaways sneak onto aircraft. In fact, by the end of the 19th century, an international stowaway craze had taken hold, making it more or less a fad to hide aboard ships crossing the Atlantic. The stowaway trend peaked during the late 1920s, around the time Clarence Terhune became the world's first aerial stowaway. The Roaring Twenties was a decade of extreme self-promotion, with massive numbers of people trying to make names for themselves any way they could, just like now. I mean, think of the crazy things people do now on video trying to go viral. It's pretty much the quick way to get famous. Out of the many stowaways that successfully hit on ocean vessels during the 20s, one man managed to stand out among the rest. Meet Billy Gawronski, a Polish-American teen who hailed from New York City's Lower East Side. In 1928, 17-year-old Billy swam across the Hudson River to Hoboken, New Jersey to a ship belonging to explorer Richard Byrd. The excellent swimmer tried to secretly board Byrd's ship, which was bound for Antarctica. It was actually the first American expedition to Antarctica. However, he got caught. Billy wasn't about to give up on his dream of traveling on his hero Richard Byrd's ship. Instead, he tried to board the supply ship and was caught again. Proving that persistence is perhaps his best quality, Billy hitchhiked south to Virginia, where the supply ship was headed to try, yet again, to sneak aboard. Finally, Billy was offered a legitimate seat on the ship. His parents had him arrested for truancy, however. Luckily, Byrd saw potential publicity in bringing that Polish stowaway kid along on his Antarctic expedition, and Billy finally got his wish. Byrd persuaded the teen's father into letting him go. On newspaper headlines, Billy became known as the happiest boy in the world. And now for number 5. But first, if you're new here, welcome, and be sure to subscribe before you leave. If you're already a sub, welcome back. Glad to see you again. Number 5. Anonymous Romanian. In January of 2010, a 20-year-old Romanian man crawled underneath the wire of a perimeter fence at the Vienna airport and climbed into the undercarriage of a privately owned Boeing 747. The plane belonged to a high-ranking sheikh from the United Arab Emirates and was bound for London's Heathrow Airport. Normally, a 97-minute flight is considered short. For this man, however, it was excruciating. As he clung to the retracted undercarriage of the plane, the man endured temperatures as low as -41 degrees Celsius and severe oxygen deprivation. In fact, perhaps the only reason the man survived was because the plane, which normally flew at an altitude of around 37,000 feet, had been instructed to fly at 25,000 feet that day due to thunderstorms. This was just low enough for the man to survive. He wasn't discovered until the plane actually landed, and he just fell right out of the undercarriage. There's only one way to describe this stowaway's circumstances after his daring stunt: extremely fortunate. Paramedics examined him and found no serious injuries, despite the extreme conditions he'd withstood throughout the flight. According to a representative for the Civil Aviation Authority, the man was extremely lucky to be alive. All things considered, the law also went easy on the man. After being arrested and questioned for being a stowaway and for entering Britain without a passport, he was released. The light consequences were partially because of the desperate measures the man had taken to escape Romania. Number 4. Daniel Ihekina. In August 2013, a teenager named Daniel Ihekina snuck into the wheel cavity of an airplane headed from Benin City to Lagos, Nigeria. His survival can be attributed to the low flying altitude typically associated with short flights. During the 35-minute domestic flight, the plane flew at a maximum altitude of 21,000 feet. Shortly before he hid in the plane's wheel compartment, Ihekina was spotted on the tarmac at Benin City by a pilot who radioed the tower and expressed his concern. According to Arik Airlines, the tower assured the pilot that the situation was under control and cleared the plane for takeoff. As the plane took off, passengers noticed that something wasn't right. Loud, unusual noises were heard from the tire compartment Ihekina was hidden in. When the plane landed, passengers spotted the young man emerging from a wheel cavity and alerted the crew. Ihekina was arrested and questioned by police. According to the young man, he was being mistreated by his family and wanted to get away from them. While Ihekina was likely sent back to Benin City and returned to his parents, the Federal Airport Authority of Nigeria and Arik Airlines were busy pointing the finger at one another over the teen's successful security breach. Number 3. Habib Hussein. On December 25, 2009, one 25-year-old man was so desperate to escape what he called a life of bonded slavery that he risked criminal charges by hiding in the bathroom of an airplane and hoping for the best. Habib Hussein was working as a cleaner at Medina Airport in Saudi Arabia when he saw an opportunity to escape his reality, which involved being forced to work as a janitor for no pay. And who knows what else he was going through. In a good faith effort to find honest work, Hussein had given all his money to dishonest employment agents who had promised him employment in the Saudi kingdom, only to be forced into unpaid labor. According to Hussein, who had traveled to Saudi Arabia from the northern Indian state of Uttar Pradesh in search of work, the only way he survived in Saudi Arabia was by begging for money. I mean, it's the new form of slavery. He boarded a plane that would soon be bound for the Indian state of Rajasthan under the excuse that it needed to be cleaned. Instead, the man locked himself in the airplane's bathroom prior to takeoff. Hussein probably knew that he'd inevitably be discovered, since someone would eventually need to use the bathroom during the flight. He was arrested for traveling without proper documents and initially denied bail. But don't worry, this has a happy ending. Bail was granted on January in 2010, and Hussein was reunited with his pregnant wife and 2 children, who had been campaigning for his release while he was held in Saudi Arabia. Number 2. Roberto Viza Egües. Attempts to flee Cuba used to be quite common, but the way one man went about doing it was pretty original. In August of 2013, Roberto Viza Egües slipped past security at José Martí International Airport in Havana, Cuba, and managed to hide in a cargo container aboard an Air France aircraft. Viza was a member of a political dissident group known as the February 24th Movement and fled Cuba after receiving a death threat for his involvement. During the 14-hour flight, Viza suffered freezing temperatures, oxygen deprivation, and a severe nosebleed. His survival was considered a miracle among journalists, and rightfully so. Many stowaways have died under such extreme conditions. Viza was discovered when the container he was hidden inside of was delivered to Parisian grocers, who found him covered in blood. After being discovered, Viza applied for asylum. The court denied the application due to a lack of evidence that Viza was likely to face political persecution in Cuba. He was then deported and escorted back into the Havana airport by French officers. He was immediately imprisoned. Number 1. Pardeep Saini. In October 1996, 23-year-old Pardeep Saini and his 19-year-old brother Vijay climbed into the undercarriage of a British Airways Boeing 747 jumbo jet that would soon be headed from New Delhi to London. The brothers, originally from Punjab, were hoping to gain asylum in Britain because they had been accused of being Sikh extremists and feared political persecution in their homeland. Tragically, Vijay froze to death during the 10-hour flight after being exposed to temperatures as low as -60 degrees Celsius. Pardeep, however, miraculously survived. According to doctors, Pardeep most likely survived as the result of being put into a state of suspended animation by a combination of hypoxia, or extreme oxygen deprivation, and hypothermia. Moments after the plane had taken off, Pardeep had passed out. After the plane landed, he was found wandering the tarmac. Pardeep's application for asylum was ultimately denied. Thanks for watching! Be very careful and don't get any ideas. Remember to subscribe before you leave, and I'll see you next time. Bye!